Hello and welcome to the Financial Wellness Hour. I am your host, Hirsch Serman. I'm thrilled to have you joining us today on WGSN-DB, the Going Solo Network. This show is for those who want to learn more about creating financial wellness, and we're going to take different life cycles. We're going to explore them both financially and emotionally, because your personal finances are usually more about the emotions associated with your finances than the money itself. And as I always said, the better prepared you are and the more emotionally healthy you are, the better and more sound financial decisions you're going to make. We are going to be a little bit general in our discussion today, but we'd love to hear from you and make it more relevant and more personal. So please do call in, or you can reach me through my website, lifecycle.financial. That's lifecycle.financial. You can also post your questions or comments on any of the platforms you might be listening to it. And I want to say, talking about timely and relevant, I'm not sure we could have a topic that is more timely and relevant, because this year is a unique year for anyone with kids in college or entering college. For many, the awards through the FAFSA and the financial aid process are the key to whether a student is able to attend college or not. I think it was maybe even more than 2 years ago, my guest and I were talking about these upcoming changes in the FAFSA process, and now here they are. The new FAFSA has a lot of people confused and needing answers, and I would probably say that the old FAFSA process was a little bit of a black hole or a void of understanding for many as well. If you're one of those people, then I would say you are actually in luck, but you do need to keep listening. Vicki Vollweiler is joining us today, and she's going to help us talk through the new FAFSA process to let me know if those questions we spoke about 2 years ago have been answered. Vicki is the founder of College Financial Prep, which is offering a full range of services relating to college funding and college admissions, both incredibly important decisions and thoughts that have to be given as you go through this process. Vicki has actually worked with several of my clients, always had wonderful feedback, very, very positive. Vicki, it's great to have you back on the show, and I'm really excited about this topic today. Thank you.
Thanks, Hirsch. Thanks for having me. Yes, definitely, like right time of year with everything going on right now.
Yeah, obviously it's relatively new in the process being open. It is different. People are going through this process. I'm sure there's a lot of people, especially they filled it out a year ago and they're going, this doesn't look the same. So
well, wait, it's not even open yet.
Oh, so it hasn't. Wow. No, I thought that it had opened by now, but you're right. If I remember correctly, they pushed it off into December now. So I'm so happy. Well, I'm going to ask you to just I'm going to ask you actually to tell a little bit about your background so people understand, A, how you came to doing what you're doing and the passion behind it. But B, I think it's going to help them understand that a little bit of the depth of how you even got into this and starting out, with your services and what you do.
So College Financial Prep was founded a good number of years ago. I am a divorced parent. And I had been working as a certified divorce coach. I was meeting with clients. I typically focused on the financial side. That's where my strengths lie. And in working with clients, they would start to say to me, now, how am I going to afford to send my kids to college? Now, as opposed to being a financial coach and, coaching people on how to save money, manage your subscriptions, don't drink so many coffees every day, college. I mean, now we're talking about big numbers. This is important stuff. And at the same time, candidly, my own kids were starting to get older and, needed to start thinking about college. And college and divorce just adds this whole other layer to college planning because, along with divorce, it's the communication issues. It's the financial planning from, two separate households and just figuring out how to do it and how to be able to afford to do it. And making sure that it's a win-win for everyone involved.
Right. And, I think something just to touch base on which you are mentioning, a lot of these settlement agreements, dissolution agreements, whatever your state calls them, they have sometimes in the statute a little bit about what's going to happen with college, but it's a very generic, based on state college, etc., and it's usually often a very specific state college. So all of a sudden, your kid doesn't want to go to that college, and although some of it is relevant to you, there's a whole new world of what you've got to discover now, especially as divorced parents, when your kid doesn't want to go to that school, wants to go to a different school, in-state, out-of-state, a private school, whatever it might be. All of a sudden, there's a huge change in this dynamic of what college is going to look like. So I think it's very, very relevant. I also think, by the way, that there's a huge misconception when it comes to filling out the FAFSA. And actually, there's several, but I'm gonna focus on one of them in particular. And I know you've heard this, I've heard this, where clients will say to me, I don't think I need to fill out the FAFSA because, I earn too much money, or whatever the reason is that they give. But they believe they don't need to do it for whatever reason, and it's not going to help them. I mean, do you agree with that, or should everybody?
Totally disagree. And I disagree for a number of reasons that I always share, with college-bound parents and also parents who have current students in college, because the forms need to be filled out every single year. So, yes, some people do earn a lot of money. They may not qualify for the traditional need-based aid. But if you want your child to be able to take out the federal student loans, you need to fill out a FAFSA application. If your child is interested in applying for work-study programs, you have to fill out the FAFSA application. Sometimes, not every single school, but sometimes the colleges will want to see that you have filed the financial aid applications, even to award merit scholarship money. Fill out the financial aid applications. The last reason, I almost like to call it almost like an insurance product. Heaven forbid, something happens. A parent gets hit by a bus. You lose a job. Something terrible happens financially. And there's this huge downward change in your finances. It's possible to go back to the college. The FAFSA is already on file, and ask them to re-review with current numbers based on the current situation. And a lot of times that's able to be done. Is it done 100% of the time on the spot at every single school? No, but often it is. And actually, that was the situation with one of our shared clients, Hirsch.
Right.
Able to save them $10,000 because of a change in situation.
Right. And I'm glad you threw out a number there, because, sometimes we throw out an idea and we say, oh, well, it's good for this and it's good for that. But each one of those reasons, whether it's a work study, whether it's, God forbid, your situation changes, whatever it is, we're often talking multiple thousands each time, or each reason that you need to fill that out, and multiply that sometimes by 4 or sometimes 5 if you take 5 years to do a degree. And we're talking some large numbers sometimes as this comes in. So I think it's very, very important. By the way, I didn't know that answer. We've spoken about it before, but I just thought it was, I think it's such a relevant question to discuss, and not only for past FAFSA, but that's going to apply, I think, going forward for everything as the changes happen as well. And, as we mentioned earlier, there is a new FAFSA this year. And so the void of information for many, I think, has gotten bigger. Like, as you said, they've delayed opening the FAFSA season, if I can call it a season. What is happening with FAFSA this year? If you can let's start at a higher level and maybe we'll drill down into it from there.
So typically, so everyone knows, FAFSA usually opens October 1st every year, and you fill it out. So if you have a 12th grader in high school, October 1st of 12th grade, you would fill it out for their freshman year. And then freshman year in October, you could fill it out for their sophomore year, and so on, and also through graduate school. Anyway, the FAFSA Simplification Act was passed, which is making changes to the FAFSA form. And we can talk about the changes in a second. But because of the because of these changes, there's been this delay with opening the form. So instead of October this year, they've been saying it's going to open in December. There's still no set date. Running joke that I'm sharing with clients is December 32nd, because I just don't have any more information to share right now, unfortunately. And because of the delay, and, again, this is going to be on a school by school basis, but I certainly, don't want parents to be upset or concerned if there's then a delay in all the processes that happen. The schools processing the financial aid applications, them getting the financial award letters out to the parents. The whole process will likely be a little delayed.
And I think it's something that people need to be thinking about and being very proactive probably is different schools have different deadlines for when you have to accept whether you're going there or not. These are most likely all going to be pushed off in some fashion.
So there's also, there's another financial aid form that's used by specific colleges, and the form is called the CSS profile. The CSS profile is administered by the college board, not the federal government. So if a student this year is applying to schools that require the CSS profile, in the main, those schools are now going to be relying more heavily on the CSS profile because that did open October 1st.
Right.
So if anyone's in that position, get those CSS profiles in as soon as you can. Don't wait for FAFSA.
Yeah, and I just think everyone should be proactive. Call the schools that your children or you, if it's you yourself, are looking at. Ask them what is happening from their specific situation, how they're going to handle it. And I think we'll talk a little bit more about that as well. But I do think this is not a time to sit back and watch and see what's going to happen with the process. There's certain things that you may be able to get done, and I think it's on every one of us. I have kids in the college and grad school systems, and I am starting to call ahead of time as well, just to see what is happening there, because I think that is so incredibly important. And I think that's something, as I said, just be proactive, be aware that part of the process, so to speak, is open, and that you can do something right now as well. And people are resistant to change in general and do not always handle change well. So I'm going to start on the positive side. What are the pros related to the changes in this process that people can maybe be happy are going to be happening with the process?
So for lower income households, the new FAFSA is expanding the amount of people that will now qualify for Pell Grants. So that's a great thing. They're also making it easier, and unfortunately, life happens and people end up in all different kinds of situations. They're making it easier for certain students to now be classified as independent, whereas it was very difficult on the prior FAFSA form. And unfortunately, I deal with some of these students, regularly, and this is a good thing for them.
So, and just a quick throwing it out, just terminology sometimes, especially if you have never gone through the process, the grant and the scholarship are monies that can be received that you do not have to pay back. Correct. The loans are the ones that you do have to pay back. And just to complicate the issue a little bit more for you, there are multiple kinds of loans that are out there. So please make sure you understand what you are signing, whether you have to pay it back or not. And if you do, how is that going to potentially affect you as you go through, whether it's you, whether it's your child, who is responsible, what is going on? These are all things I find personally, people sign these documents because they want to go to college, and they really do not always understand what they're signing, or potentially 4 years later, what financial situation they're going to put themselves in. And I think that's another piece that you guide people through, right? So if you want to just touch on that maybe a little bit.
Yeah, what really confuses people is that and rightly so, I understand why it confuses parents. The federal government or the colleges, they consider financial aid to be the student loans. Student loans are considered financial aid because the government is laying out money
Right.
for the student to go to college, but yet you need to pay it back. So it's important to realize that when you get those financial aid award letters that show all the monies that you're getting, to look at, the scholarships and grants that are free money, and the student loans, realize those need to be paid back. It's not free money.
Right. I mean, the other piece also I would say is when you're looking at the loan, and I'm not the expert here. I'm throwing out the concept. But the loans, some of them, they get deferred and you don't have to start paying them until you graduate. And then there are other loans that,
accrues.
They start kind of next month after you sign. And just be aware of that, because you don't want to ruin your credit, or you want to make sure that you've got the money in the bank account or whatever it might be. So I think that's another piece that sometimes people are missing, or not always incorporating into their larger financial picture as they move forward.
So if a household has need-based aid, they'll typically qualify for a subsidized loan. And what that means is that the interest will not accrue when the student is in college. They'll just start paying the loan back after college. But if the family doesn't have need-based aid, those loans the interest starts accruing as soon as you take out that loan freshman year. So it's important to be mindful of, starting to pay back what you can as soon as you can, so that way it doesn't balloon up.
Right. And the other piece to that is, I think everybody is aware interest rates have more than doubled on mortgages over the last 2 years. As an example, interest rates are much higher than they were 2 and 3 years ago. You might have a child who was in college and getting pretty low rates. You've got your second child going into college. Can be a very different situation if you are loaning $20,000 or $30,000 and the interest rate is that much more and it's accruing over the next 4 years. What does that mean every time you take out a loan? What's it going to look like at the end? And those are things that you can look at ahead of time and get an understanding ahead of time. And I would recommend that you do.
Something that I do often with clients. I'll sit down with parents and children, and we'll start comparing some of the colleges that the child is interested in. Right. And we'll typically compare, private college ABC to an in-state university. And we'll start looking at the numbers and what does that loan look like? And what does the interest look like? And, what are the monthly payments going to look like down the road? Somewhat of a financial literacy lesson. So that way the students have a better understanding, because candidly, how many 17 and 18-year-olds, understand what the total cost of college is? Some do, not most. So it's an important lesson. And, parents are always thanking me afterwards, because the children are better able to understand the process and decision-making that has to go into this.
Yeah. And the more information, especially in something like this, that people are not familiar with, the better decisions they can make. And they truly can change the financial trajectory of someone's life if they overextend themselves at the age of 18. And that is something to think about. It sounds so extreme maybe, but I have seen people coming out literally with 2, 3, 4 times the loan amount as their starting salary. And if you go to graduate school, it's only getting bigger from there. So yes. I think those are all important. We do have to start heading to a break. We do need to pay some bills, but please, Vicki, how can people get in touch with you? Anyone thinking about college or in the process of college, I recommend please reach out to Vicki. She is a wealth of knowledge. As I said earlier, I have sent several of my clients over her way, always had very positive feedback.
Everyone can reach out at www.collegefinancialprep.com. Just click the little button, schedule a free call. Let's talk about concerns and strategies and, how to help you move forward.
Please reach out and we will be back. Don't go anywhere.
Hi, I'm John Thomas. I want to share with you a professional products and services directory we call Going Solo Directory. And you need to check this out. If you want exposure to your business or are seeking professional product or services, this directory has it all. And that membership, for the many special features, you get the benefit of a worldwide exposure with a 40-minute video interview on an international business show showcase. All this for just one low annual fee. For more information, contact GoingSoloDirectory.com.
Hello and welcome back to WGSN-DB, the Going Solo Network. I am Hirsch Serman, the host of the Financial Wellness Hour, and today we have Vicki Vollweiler joining us from, we're talking about the new FAFSA and how it's going to impact you. And I think that is so incredibly important because there are a lot of changes. I think already people do not understand the process of going in. These changes are brand new. So if you didn't know things before, there's certainly other things that you may not know going forward. Now, I do want to recap some of the things because I think there were some things that are just so important that we understand. Obviously, Vicki shared her story around counseling and coaching clients through divorce and how many of them kept saying, well, how am I going to do this college funding thing? Because it is enormous. And understanding it. And we spoke a little bit there about the loans versus scholarships versus the grants and all the different types of loans and understanding your real obligation. You might sign for, I'm just making up a number here, $20,000, but you're not paying back $20,000. You're paying significantly more than that. We spoke about how the process itself is not fully up and running. The CSS profile for some schools is up and running, and that might be play a much larger role this year in the process. But the actual FAFSA process itself is not open yet and does not have an actual opening date. Obviously, we're going to learn a little bit more. There are going to be changes that come through that. We spoke a little bit about the positives. There are people who are impacted in a positive way by this, whether it be the Pell Grants that you had mentioned, that more people there might be more money available, it sounded like, if that makes sense. The other thing that came out is how it really is so important that everybody fills out the FAFSA. I was not able to write everything down that you said, but you did mention if they got or they want to get a work aid type situation through the school, if their situation changes, anything to that effect as well. The other thing that I do want to just bring up before we dive back into the show is, I know, Vicki, you and I have spoken about this, but you've also helped clients of mine do this. I think sometimes people are not always aware of the ability to challenge, so to speak, or appeal whatever has been awarded. So we spoke about understanding your grant versus your scholarship versus the different types of loans and what does it mean when you're paying back and understanding what you're signing on. But sometimes there's the ability to appeal that, right, and get a better outcome potentially. And I'm going to ask you to touch on that a little bit as well.
So appeals, in my mind, comes in two flavors. One, your child may be applying to a school, and you're just hoping to receive a little more money to entice you to go to that school. So it is possible to request additional money, to negotiate with the colleges, so to speak. Typically I'd suggest, having comparable offers, and reaching out to the school. But yeah, I always liken it to being an attorney and building an argument, building a case. Why should they give you more money to attend that school? So that's the first. The second is that there's a significant change in household finances, whether it's a job loss, whether it's a death in the family, whether it's a divorce, whether it's, some significant situation that causes your household finances to be significantly different than what had been stated on the FAFSA. Right. And then it's possible to go back to the school and request a formal appeal.
And just to put a little bit more perspective or meat around that, a lot of people don't really fully understand quite how far back you look when you are filling out your FAFSA forms. So, for example, if you were to fill out your CSS profile, and let's say in December of this year, 2023, you are filling out that FAFSA form, you're looking at your 2022 income and financial situation. You may not get an award, let's say March of 24. And again, they've looked at what's happened in 2022. There's quite a bit of time that's passed, and often people's situations do change. Yes. And so being able to bring that relevancy to the situation as to, well, 15 months later, it's not the same as it was back in 2022 can be part of building that case, as you said, to be able to get that appeal going, right?
Yes, and that's, I mean, honestly, that's a lot of the work that I do, yeah.
Yeah.
Many people are often in that situation. I mean, sometimes people think, oh, FAFSA, it's so easy. Why, but sometimes people have, complicated lives. It's not always as simple as others may think it is.
Well, and you've seen this. I know I've seen this. Often people, when they file their 2022 return, let's say, they're filing a joint return because it's more advantageous to them. But they've got divorced within the next 15 months when they get, they get that award, and the situation is so vastly different because now they have two households, the same amount of income. That's a very different situation potentially as to what it was when you filed jointly and were under the same roof. So just one example of where things often change. And we did speak about the positives. I've mentioned some of them. Got to look at the flip side, I think, a little bit as well. There are going to be changes I think people are not going to embrace in the same way. Are there any cons of what's coming up that will arise that you're aware of?
Definitely. So the first con is just general for all households, all parents. If you have more than one child in college at the same time, the FAFSA form will no longer take that into consideration. They're not going to consider anymore that you have to support more than one child in college. So that's going away, unfortunately. Yes, a big one. If you are a small business owner, it used to be that if you had less than 100 employees, you did not need to report the value of your business. That's supposed to be changing. So that's another, could potentially be a big one. And really, there are lots of people, senators and whatnot, from the Midwest. I mean, people who own farms, they're small business owners. It's not like they can sell their acres to go and pay for college. So there are lots of people that are up in arms about this. The last one that is specific to divorced households, it used to be the custodial parent who would file the FAFSA form. Now it is no longer the custodial parent, or it could be, but it's now the parent who provides more financial support for the child. It's not the parent who pays child support. It's which parent is providing more support for the child. Now, to date, I haven't seen any guidance yet as to if anybody's going to be looking for proof on this, how they're going to,
how they're going to verify that.
Exactly. And I'm working with clients and having them put together a list to see, well, which parent, let's figure it out.
And by the way, that was one of our questions from 2 years ago that we discussed. We were trying to figure out how they would do that, and we couldn't. So, yeah, that's a huge question.
Yeah.
And the other thing is, do people always know exactly who's paying more or who's not? That's another one that, from a personal perspective, that people have to think through. Because when you're splitting, it's not as simple as I pay 60% of the expenses, you pay 40%. I mean, because now we got to probably include things like, well, they live with me 60% of the time. That plays in, even though I'm only paying 40% or whatever the case might be. It's probably a pretty complicated formula, and there's, as you said, really no guidance at this point.
So what I'm doing with clients right now, I'm basically that neutral third party. I mean, often in divorce, not every single co-parent situation is amicable.
Right.
And there are times where I am just the go-between between the parents and gathering the data, and I make sure that everything remains confidential. I'm not sharing any information with either side,
Right.
but I'm just guiding them as to how we should move forward this year.
So yeah, please, everyone, there's a lot to be thinking about, and more than last year even. So I think all these things that you're bringing up are so incredibly important. And I will just put out that both Vicki and I are going to repost this. So if somebody's listening now and they want to re-listen, let's say in 6 weeks, because let's say they do get it open, right, the process, please go to Vicki's website, go to my website, whether it's collegefinancialprep.com, whether it's lifecycle.financial. Please do go back, listen to this, call us. This literally can be thousands and thousands of dollars. And I'm not 100% sure quite how much of this you're going to be able to answer at this point, just because it's not even open, as you said. And in my mind, I'm trying to simplify several questions. So ask me to repeat them if you need to. But we've shared, and you've shared a lot about how the FAFSA process is changing, and the FAFSA process plays into a larger financial aid process, right? It's not just you fill out the FAFSA and you're done. The school may have its own forms or questions or process over and above what the FAFSA is. And I'm going to ask, do these changes from FAFSA's perspective, what's happening with FAFSA, how does it play into the larger financial aid process? Are the forms going to change, the process on the larger scale? How is this all going to be impacted?
So, we said FAFSA is delayed. FAFSA is a government form. It's so when you fill out the FAFSA form, you're listing, here's another change. Actually, here's another change. So the old FAFSA listed 10 schools. Now you can list up to 20 colleges on the FAFSA form.
Wow.
So that's a new change for this year. So you list all your colleges on the FAFSA application, which is a government form. Then you submit it, and it takes a few days to process. And then about a week or so later, then the colleges should receive your FAFSA application. Now, as I mentioned earlier, there's also the CSS profile. If you could send those in earlier, if your schools require it, you do that. Some states also have, not every state, some states also have their own financial aid applications. So important to research that. First, you do FAFSA, then the state application if it's available. Some schools, not every school, very, very few schools, when you consider the amount of colleges out there, then also have their own institutional forms. Anyway, let me back up a bit. So there's the admissions process where you're sending in the Common App, and College Financial Prep now offers those services too, because it all plays into the financial, right, which schools you select. So you have the Common App. Imagine a three-legged stool. You have the Common App, you have the financial aid piece, and then you have the SAT or ACT test scores. So all of those are getting sent in at different times, but it all gets put together at the colleges. So don't worry about when you're sending the financial aid forms in, or just send them in. The schools will take care of it and put the whole package together. First you have to wait and see if your child is admitted to the college. And then after the admissions, then you will find out the entire package, what the costs for tuition and room and board are, what type of scholarships you may be receiving, what type of federal grants you may be receiving, if you're going to accept the student loan. And ultimately, you'll see a bottom line number for each school. They're all every school has their own format. It's not always so easy to compare apples to apples, but it is a very important exercise to do. Right. Certainly, and that helps with the whole, if you want to negotiate, let's see what the other offers are. And it's not all based on finances. I'm a mom too. I get it. There's the emotional component of where your child wants to go to school. There's, your feeling how far you want them to go away from home. There's lots of things to consider. But typically that will happen in March when the families will receive their financial award letters. I mean, I wouldn't be surprised if it's delayed a bit this year. Decision day is supposed to be May 1st. I know with COVID, some of the schools delayed it till June 1st. I mean, I don't know anything, but I wouldn't be surprised if it happened again. So I hope that answers.
No, it does. It does. And I mean, just correct me if I'm wrong, but really the basic process, what I'm hearing is get your applications in for sure. Speak to the school, see if they need that CSS profile. Get that in.
Or it's on
as
their
soon
website.
as the FAFSA comes, especially because it's later this year, you want to work on that as soon as it comes out. Keep an eye out for that. And then ultimately, you got to wait a little bit. Then it becomes that waiting game till March, maybe even April this year, when you'll get your reward. Think about appealing if it makes sense, and then moving forward. And something I want to throw out, I know this is something I learned from you, but I think it's important. You mentioned about college admissions. The financial, there should be a whole strategy in getting financial aid way beyond, or I should say way before actually applying for financial aid.
Yes.
So the schools that you're applying to, you need to understand, okay, how are they going to process things? So especially for divorced families, as an example, some colleges take one of the incomes into account. Some will take both.
Exactly.
And that's a big piece. Okay.
Exactly.
Speak to Vicki, because she can do that research for you. Maybe has worked with people, gone to those schools. That in itself should be kind of the beginning of your planning, as opposed to this 20 wish list and you have no idea what it's going to look like.
Well,
let's get a little bit more focused. Get somebody who can guide you through this from the beginning. That becomes so important. You look at two equivalent schools and you decide on one, it might not be the right decision. The other one might be vastly better or kind of more beneficial financially in what the package is that they're going to give you. So these are some of the thoughts. I don't know if you have anything to add on that, but I think those are other things people need to consider.
No, definitely. I've added two people to my team. One is a college advisor. One is more a career discovery specialist, helps people, kids figure out their majors, their career paths. Why? Because if the kids have to change majors multiple times, they could be on a 6-year plan instead of a 4-year plan. And everything at College Financial Prep is about making sure you're saving money on the cost of college. With college admissions, yes, we're focusing on the finances a bit earlier, creating a strategy for finding those colleges to apply to. And then, with our college admissions counselor, then she's researching within those parameters. So that way the schools are a good academic fit, a good social fit, but also a good financial fit. Because that's so important. It's the first step.
In about 1 minute, I'm going to ask you to pull out I'm going to ask you to answer in about 1 minute because we're running out of time, but I'm going to ask you to pull out a crystal ball here. I know this is nothing that anyone can say with certainty. What are your predictions for how colleges are going to deal with these changes and delays in the FAFSA process?
I think they're relying more heavily on CSS, those schools that accept it. I think this is my prediction. I don't think they have the manpower. We're talking about verifying everything. The financial aid offices don't have the manpower for this. Right. I think they're going to be pushing things through to try to keep up, to move the process forward. I think it's a bad situation for everybody. I think it's going to be hard for the families, hard for the colleges to keep up with the government's, schedules or demands. And I just hope everybody's ready.
Even more reason, I think, for somebody to reach out, get that guidance and that expertise that you have. One more time before we wrap up, how can people get in touch with you?
To reach out on the internet, www.collegefinancialprep.com. Click on the little button. You can schedule a 15-minute call or send me an email, hello@collegefinancialprep.com.
I encourage everyone to do it. This is it's an evolving topic. I can't even say it's a timely topic. It's an evolving topic because we're still not sure what's happening in all the things. And I really do encourage people to reach out to Vicki to learn more. And as I said, it's not just the financial aid or the FAFSA form that she helps with. It's really planning even from what colleges should we be applying to all the way through the process and appeals included? And I hope people feel a little bit more equipped. There's still a lot of questions and unanswered questions out there, I know, but I hope people feel a little bit more equipped, at least with what's happening, the process. Vicki, we got to look at a January show, something to give an update on all of these things, because it's the new FAFSA process, but it's so new it hasn't even started yet. So please do reach out to Vicki, as we said, at collegefinancialprep.com. It literally can mean the difference in thousands and thousands of dollars for people. I am Hirsch Serman, your host for the Financial Wellness Hour. Please reach out to me through my website, Lifecycle Financial. That's lifecycle.financial. Please reach out with questions for me or Vicki, my guest today. CC Schatz, thank you for being in the background and doing all that you do to make it easy and bring these kind of topics and discussions to everybody out there. I look forward to you joining me on my next show. Have a great week, and thank you for listening.